Devi, how are
Hi,
you?
I'm good. How are you, Jitendra?
Not bad, not bad. I just had a meeting with Dhruv and we were discussing how long we are doomed to be in this very peculiar dystopian state.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thanks for taking the time to do this.
Sure, sure. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I have a whole bunch of questions, and so some of it might
Yeah.
feel a little bit like a rapid fire round. Some of them are light, they might not need a lot of thought. Some of them might take some more thought, in which case feel free to pause and think about it if you want. If any question you feel like you would rather skip, that's entirely fine too. But in general, if you can sort of err on the side of being open, which, like you said, I think you are anyway,
Mhm.
vulnerable, transparent, I think that would be good.
Mhm.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, so I'll get started. So my first question is, what were you doing just before this call?
I was at another meeting because my life is from meeting to the next.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What is your daily routine like?
Daily routine now is I the first thing I do is I get up and I read check on my email and I read the news, and
Mm-hmm.
it's essentially in a very anxious way looking through what's happening on the polls, what's happening with COVID, and a few weeks ago it was about what's happening with the fires in California.
Yeah,
So it's the behavior of a anxious, slightly neurotic person checking on the state of the world.
yeah, yeah,
And then at some point, I have to stop indulging myself in this way and get to the activities of the day, which starts usually with meetings around 8:30 or 9. Yeah.
mm, yeah, yeah. What is the favorite part of your day?
The favorite part of my day, I like to have time to read and think, and that typically for me is in the evenings.
Mm,
In the day it's more about yeah, meeting people and talking and discussing, so I enjoy that as well.
mm,
So there is a extrovert side and an introvert side, so I get to indulge my introvert side in the evening, like post dinner, but the extrovert side is what is there in the day, where uh, you are just meeting with students, colleagues, faculty meetings, staff meetings at Facebook,
yeah,
all of that.
yeah, yeah. And what is the least favorite part of your day?
The least favorite part of the day is, I think that in any job there are lots of very boring things which need to be done. So in academia, these include, writing zillions of letters, evaluating people. But this is a part of the job. It's one of your duties where you have to do this. Uh, I think uh, other bureaucratic steps are, filing for reimbursements or things like that. So there are very bureaucratic parts of one's life which one has to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I once read this book from a university president, and his perspective was that when you take up a job, don't just judge it by the fun parts of the job,
Mm-hmm.
because there are the fun parts of the job, and this is obviously what you emphasize when you decide, oh, I want to make a career in X.
Mm-hmm.
But you should also look at the dull parts of the job and the boring parts of the job, and then ask the question, are you able to do them? Okay. And if you really, really can't stand doing them, then you really should not be in that line.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. What one chore do you dislike the most and why?
Yeah, I think I mentioned this. It's essentially writing recommendation letters, which I dislike. The reason I dislike this is because uh, it's because people are very, very multidimensional,
Mm-hmm.
and research is very multidimensional,
Mm-hmm.
and yet we have to write these letters which are going to be looked at by some committee which is making a very one-dimensional decision.
Yeah.
The committee is making a one-dimensional decision on whether to interview somebody or give someone an award. So it's
Mm.
the complexity of the person is being reduced to essentially one number and then a threshold, right?
Oh,
So if we
yeah.
think of it from that perspective, it's a very silly thing, but it has to be done. And then when we write these letters, we are trying to provide them all the features for that decision.
Right. Yeah.
So it is. I take this job very seriously. I I write, I don't know how many, recommendation letters for people to get their first job, how many letters for people to get tenure, full prof,
Mm.
get into get various awards and so on. But
Mm.
nevertheless, it's still tedious.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you struggle with procrastination?
Yes, yeah. I wish I could say otherwise, but I do.
Mm.
And I think there are, yeah, it's much easier to do the fun things than the boring things. And it's a continual struggle. I'm not, my attitude to this is that there's some people who are lucky and who just don't have this problem. I mean, my wife is an academic and she's an example of that.
Mm.
She doesn't really procrastinate. I procrastinate a lot. I've just found a way to manage this weakness.
Mm.
Okay, this is that you have to know your strengths and weaknesses, and some of your weaknesses, all you need to what you need to do is to develop coping mechanisms.
Mm.
So it does not become it does not become super hurtful to you,
Right.
right? And for some
Right.
people it does.
Mm.
So I've just developed mechanisms by which I do this. It's not become pathological.
Right. Right. Um, do you struggle with time management?
Yeah, goes together with that.
Right.
Again, it's not, I think of this not as something where you're just good at it or bad at it, but you get better at it.
Mm.
So I do a much better job now of estimating how much time various things will take.
Mm.
So uh, I was earlier, there was much more wishful thinking in my planning.
Mm.
And I think I've got better at that.
Mm.
Uh, and and then you play little tricks like you tie up some fun thing with some boring thing. Okay, you
Yeah.
tie up there's some boring thing, you break it up into chunks, and then you just have to do one little bit, which you can do in 15 minutes. I mean,
Mm.
these are all written up by zillions of people.
Yeah.
So I do use those tricks once in a while.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you set an alarm in the morning?
No,
No.
I just get up automatically. My body has an internal alarm which wakes me up at 7 a.m.
Yeah. Um, if I asked your friends what is Jitendra like, what are three adjectives that you think they would use?
Ah, I think one thing they would say is that I'm quiet at times, but very argumentative at times.
Hmm.
And what goes with argumentative is opinionated.
Hmm.
Uh, and I think that's what they would say probably.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh,
And is that true? Is any of it exaggerated? Are they missing anything?
I think that is certainly true, because I think that the same attitude that I have to my intellectual life, I have in my personal and social life, which is that I think, one should be willing to argue about everything. Now, I think what is important is to have a sense of humility about being wrong and changing your mind.
Hmm.
So I feel that there's some people whose humility would lead them to not express an opinion,
Hmm.
or be very wishy-washy.
Hmm.
In my approach would be that no, you should be able to take a point of view, I mean, you should be able to take point of view A and argue the value of that, point of view B and argue the value of that, and be very conscious that you may be wrong and that you may have to change your mind. I think it's very difficult for humans to be able to change their mind, but this is, I think, the first and foremost requirement of being a scientist.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, that
And
makes sense.
I've been wrong so many times that I've my reward system has my internal system has accepted that, which has
Yeah,
made me better at dealing with when I'm wrong.
right, right. Are you happy with the number of close friends you have?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, for me, it's a relatively small number. I mean, and some of them go back to my college days, I think,
Mm.
and then some of them have been acquired over my work life,
Mm.
and I feel I'm very lucky in that sense.
Mm.
I have very good relationships with many of my former students,
Mm.
and because it's over time we have talked about many issues and not just science.
Mm. Yeah. What is one thing you're worse at than people around you?
Uh, I'm going to repeat that old line, which is that I think I'm not efficient at dealing with boring aspects of my job,
Mm.
and I've seen people who are clearly better.
Mm. Yeah. What is your single biggest strength?
What is my single biggest strength? I think I'm I know lots of different things.
Mm. Yeah.
So
Um, yeah.
I don't think I'm necessarily a deeper thinker on any one topic, but because I know many different things, I can connect them.
Mm. Yeah.
So
Makes sense.
that is, I think, in terms of my research strategy, that is, I think, the extra thing that I bring to the table
Mm.
relative to other colleagues. I mean,
Mm.
I think research is it's an ecosystem, and different people will work with different styles, and that is how it should be.
Mm.
But my own style is that I know lots of different things, and I can connect them.
Mm. Mm. What is a recurring moral conflict?
What is a recurring moral conflict? Well, good question. I think that for all of us who are in these very privileged situations, right, in terms of we have very comfortable jobs, we are financially comfortable, we are even in this COVID time, we have not really had to miss much of a beat.
Mm-hmm.
So we are very lucky in
Mm-hmm.
a certain sense, and many people in the world are not so lucky.
Mm.
And I think that we have to acknowledge that so much is just luck. I mean, I think that at least to me, I'm conscious that where I'm now is so much a result of luck rather than just my own hard work.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there a specific instance where you distinctly recall feeling privileged?
Well, I feel privileged all the time. I think uh, I mean, as a researcher, for example, uh, the quality of your students, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so I think I get credit for lots of work for which really the fact that I had really good students and postdocs is at stake. Now, maybe I contributed a little bit to making them slightly better,
Yeah.
but uh, but but fundamentally, it's being lucky in terms of the raw material you get to work with.
Yeah.
And I think that if I was exactly the same person, but I was in a situation where I didn't really have such good colleagues and students,
Mm.
my impact would be much lower.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you insecure about?
Oh, I'm insecure that I'm going to lose my creative edge, and this is a sign of age. So you are, I mean, the traditional statement is that, like in mathematics, I mean, after 40, you're sort of in decline, right?
Hmm.
I think this is not true in, say, a field like history, where it is believed that you're at your best in your 60s.
Hmm.
So I think where do we lie? I don't know. Uh, so I think it comes down to depth versus breadth, right? So I think in terms of, I mean, you can tie it to certain aspects of your cognitive capabilities,
Hmm.
what you can retain in short-term memory, and the chain of an argument that you can keep in your head at the same time,
Hmm.
etc., etc. What people call fluid intelligence.
Hmm.
So that is, so I'm probably at a stage of my life where that is in decline, and
Hmm.
I'm not, I mean, that's just it. I mean, there's nothing to be embarrassed about it.
Yeah.
But then there is that other part of intelligence which people call crystallized intelligence, which is knowing lots of things.
Hmm.
So, and that's essentially going up linearly, right? So you
Hmm.
know more things as the older you are.
Hmm.
So essentially, what I need to do is to find ways of exploiting my strengths, and not to let my weaknesses
Hmm.
hurt me.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. Do you or have you felt like an imposter?
Oh yeah, everybody does. I do. Of course,
Hmm.
I have. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's this is. Yeah, I mean, I still feel it. So I feel like, I've been lucky enough to get various awards and get selected to this or that or the other, and I seriously wonder, okay, was the committee just drunk that day? so, uh, so, and then, yeah, maybe. I mean, it's fine. I mean, I don't think that it's ever been debilitating, right?
Hmm.
So that's the important thing. It's okay to have self doubt. I think self doubt is important for being self aware.
Hmm. Yeah.
And and if somebody never had the imposter syndrome, I would really worry about that person, because that means that they have no self doubt,
Hmm.
which means that they will not realize when they are wrong
Hmm.
and when they have to change.
Hmm. Yeah. What is something that you're trying out these days, and how is that going?
Well, in this particular world we live in, how we have much more many more restrictions on what we can try.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I can talk more about sort of my intellectual space, and I'm very much interested in sort of action and motor control and robotics now, and uh, so it's interesting because I feel that I have to go into an area where I don't necessarily know everything.
Hmm.
I mean, in computer vision, I have the advantage that I have been in the field since the early 1980s. So most of the field has developed in my time. So I know I know the literature and the various ways in which various ideas go wrong quite
Hmm.
well.
Hmm.
Whereas when I go into a field which I have not worked in before,
Hmm.
it creates a certain degree of vulnerability, because sometimes you have your intuitions and they could just be wrong because you haven't tried something, and what you think of as easy may be hard.
Hmm.
So, but actually, it's fun. I think that over my career, I have switched around a lot in terms of different subfields of vision, and moving between sort of more computer vision approaches to perception to cognitive science to machine learning to geometry.
mm,
And that has been fun, I
mhm.
think. And now it's reaching out even beyond vision. And I think I think that's interesting because you have to sort of learn more, and you can't just be driven by your past prejudices.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, what is your favorite tool or trick or hack or something of that sort that makes your life more fun, more efficient, more convenient? Anything of that sort?
I don't I don't know if I have anything of special. I read a lot.
Mm,
Okay,
mm,
so I think that and I read pretty fast. So
mm,
so I think that's an advantage that I have, that I can read papers and so on fairly quickly,
mm.
and which helps me a little bit. When I was an undergrad, it helped me cram for exams quickly. But now its main value is going through, a pile of papers,
Yeah, yeah,
or yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So I think that's the one thing which is helpful. Yeah.
yeah. What do you tend to think about when you're not intentionally trying to think about something?
Well, I think about sort of the world and politics and all of that, and
Mm,
where we are and where we are going in the 21st century.
yeah.
So I think so I mean I do actually worry about things like climate change and um, the state of uh, you know the political state of the world. I
Mm,
think we seem to be, I don't know, right now I think we are in a pessimistic phase.
mm,
It's strange because maybe 20, 10, 20 years ago, I think we had reason to be optimistic. I think the Cold War was over, so the risk of nuclear holocaust wasn't there.
mm,
I think I think that globalization had a big positive impact. I mean, uh, billions of people were pulled out of poverty. I mean,
mm,
in China, Southeast Asia, India, bits of
mm,
Africa.
mm,
And overall, the trend was that, yes, a smaller fraction of the world was going hungry.
mm,
Okay? And now I think we are in a phase where we are kind of retreating from globalization.
mm,
Uh, Nationalist tendencies are coming to the fore in many countries.
mhm,
I think not don't want to pick any one country for that. And I think we are not dealing with the fears of climate change, the issues of climate change.
mm,
So there are very bad scenarios we could think about, right, of the
mm.
world. So
Yeah.
that does bother me. And in these times, what happens is that extremists take over, and extremists could be of the left or extremists could be of the right.
Mm,
Maybe extremists of the right are more ascendant now.
mm.
But these are slightly strange times we live in.
Yeah.
I mean, 2020 is a very strange year.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very difficult to make predictions in these kinds of times. Like,
Mhm,
I don't know what the world will be in 2025.
mm.
So the variance is very high of what could be the world could be in 2025.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
can imagine very positive things and I can imagine very negative things.
Mm.
And it's just that, like, there would be some previous times where we would not have expected this uncertainty.
Mhm,
Like in 1995, what you expected to see in 2000, what you would have predicted would have been how it turned out,
mm. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Looking
Makes
5 years
sense.
out, you would have made predictions which would have been reasonably close to the truth.
Mm.
And in 2020, can you make predictions about what 2025 will be as being?
Yeah.
I think we will, but how confident can you be about that?
Right. Right. Makes sense. Makes sense. Um, what is something surprising about you? Something that the rest of us might not guess?
Yeah, well, I think right now I'm a pretty extroverted person who, argues a lot, and in various scientific discussions, I'm not shy of expressing my opinions. But when I was in high school or early years of college, I was totally shy, you know, kind of person who didn't really have many friends or, you know,
Hmm.
would, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What is one thing about the world that surprises you?
Ah, the world which surprises me. It's the I think it's the world now, because
Hmm.
if you look at history back in 1991, there was somebody who wrote a book called The End of History,
Hmm.
and there was this expectation that yes, now it's all smooth, and we'll just steadily get more prosperous, and life will just get better for people, and so on and so forth.
Hmm.
So it was essentially going to become boring.
Hmm.
And so it does. I mean, I'm actually super surprised by how much the world has changed in
Hmm.
that respect.
Hmm.
So,
Interesting.
so the surprising thing to me is 2020.
It's not boring.
It's not boring.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, where were we in January 1, 2020, and where are we going to be on January 1, 2021?
yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Uh, so, uh, so it's. I mean, if you want to think about connected to science, I think the thing which it tells us is that there are long tails in any phenomena, right? So
Hmm.
we always use these models of Gaussians, but in Gaussians, low probability events don't occur.
Hmm.
As you go out into the tails, the probabilities just disappear.
Yeah.
Okay, whereas the world we live in actually has long tails.
Hmm.
Okay, so I mean, some people use the term black swan events. So black swan events are these rare events, but if you integrate over all of them, they are quite likely.
Hmm.
And in 2020, we have had like 4 black swan events. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that is what is, I think, in a way, it's a surprising thing that, I mean, by definition, every black swan event is surprising,
Hmm.
but at one level, it is not surprising. I
Right.
mean, that there will be these
Yeah,
surprising events.
yeah, yeah. Makes sense. Um, what is something recent that happened that was unexpected, like in the last couple of weeks or so?
Oh, Ruth Bader Ginsburg's death.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, I was just, yeah, totally shocked, and I think the impact of that is quite strong.
yeah, yeah. What is one way in which you wish your life was different?
I'm pretty happy with my own life. I just wish there were ways in which other people's lives would be more different. So, so I don't really have anything to complain about. So I feel, as I said, I feel lucky, and to use this term that people use now, privileged.
Yeah,
Okay, so I don't have any issues for myself.
yeah,
What I do feel is that I think the world is not in a very good place right now.
yeah, yeah. Um, what are you looking forward to tomorrow or next week?
I I'd like to have some period of time where it's reasonably quiet. I have no chores to complete, so I could just be uninterrupted, maybe on some beach house, you know,
Yeah,
reading, relaxing,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
which I cannot do. I have too many,
yeah,
too many things coming up,
yeah, yeah,
but that's what I would like to retreat to.
yeah. But what is something that is going to happen that you're looking forward to?
Or is something going to, well, I'm not looking forward. I'm neutral about it, but next month I'll be 60 years old. So
Okay. Happy birthday in advance. Yeah.
And so that's a moment uh, to I yeah, I don't particularly celebrate birthdays, but I think I take stock.
Hmm.
So there is a ancient Indian characterization of life, which is that there are these four stages of life.
Hmm.
So there's this first stage where you're a student, and then there's a stage where you're a domestic person, and then there is a stage where you travel and you learn from others.
Hmm.
And there's this final stage where you become what's called a sannyasi. So you just then your the truth is internal to you.
Hmm.
So I mean, you don't have to take exactly those four stages literally and seriously, but I do believe in the stages of in having some sense of the stages of life and a career and so forth.
Hmm.
So I think uh, instead of, for example, being driven so much by my ego, I should be driven much more by a sense of how I'm helping others.
Hmm.
So if at one point in my life I was more proud of papers that I wrote, at
Hmm.
this stage I'm more proud of the students that I trained.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay, because that is actually a much bigger contribution to society.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I think so this is why I don't have what I think is part of the American zeitgeist, which is this fear of growing old. I have absolutely no fear of growing old,
Hmm.
because to me, I mean, and this I have this Indian philosophy is my guide. I think that there are stages of life, and you have to you should do the right thing depending on the stage of life you are in.
Hmm. Hmm.
At this stage, I think a very big part of what you can do based on what I can do based on what experience I have is advise and help and nurture and mentor.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Do you think you're average, above average, below average, happy relative to people around you?
I'm pretty happy, I think.
Hmm. Yeah. When was the last time you danced?
When was the last time I danced? Oh my God. Not in COVID times. I
Yeah.
think it was some birthday party. No, not birthday party. I think some friend's son's wedding,
I see.
maybe a year ago,
Hmm. Yeah.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, what was your most recent dream that you remember?
Most recent dream that I remember. Oh, my dreams are always of a certain nature. They're always about uh, uh, there's a certain pattern to them, which is that I, I, I rush to something and then somebody tells me that I'm too late, in the sense that it's like, okay, so there is some exam and I'm at the exam hall, and then the professor tells me, no, the exam has ended. You are 3 hours late.
I see.
And
Yeah.
this is a very recurring motif in my dreams.
Hmm.
And I think this probably reflects a lifetime of being driven by deadlines and in these roles of either taking exams or giving exams, or paper deadlines, or I think our
Yeah.
life is is around deadlines, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think all of them have got sublimated into this dream. All
Yeah.
these dreams, they all have this character. And
Yeah.
that's not all, but
Yeah.
it's a
A lot
recurring
of them.
motif which
Yeah.
reveals my life and fears.
Yeah. Are you more optimistic than people around you or more pessimistic?
I'm quite optimistic scientifically.
Hmm.
I'm currently, with respect to the world, yeah, I think I'm also probably more optimistic. I think even though things are very bad,
Hmm.
right now I feel that I see there are some very good paths that could go forward from where we are.
Mm. Yeah.
And there's a lot of uncertainty. So, but I'm going to focus on the more positive futures.
Mm.
And yeah, so I'm definitely not fatalistic.
Mm.
Definitely don't think that, oh, the world is going to hell and there's nothing we can do. I
Mm.
feel that there is a lot of uncertainty. There are good futures and bad futures, and uh, it's. I think with the rational mind, one should list all of them.
Mm.
But from the activist perspective, it is better to focus on the positive scenarios.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think there is a point to life, to our existence?
Well, in some I don't know. In a very, I'm an atheist, so at some level, if you take, the nature and biology are just processes. So at that level, you can say, uh, no, it's just what it is. However, I think that this is not true from the subjective point of view.
Mm.
So I think the subjective point of view is that there is a life well led, and a life well led gives you an internal satisfaction in your neural networks
Mm.
and those of others.
Mm.
And and so that's the point of life. So it exists. It is in the subjective existence, in our subjective existence, ours and those of others.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, okay, to take the most current example, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Was there a point in her life? Very much so, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think that there was a point in her life for herself. Otherwise, why was she, uh, working till the age of 87 and through, many major illnesses?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think she, I would say, was probably a happy person. She accomplished a lot, and she had that sense of movement which comes from that.
Mm.
And then she changed the lives of others. So subjectively, she caused many other people to be in a better state.
Mm. Yeah.
So I think the point of life comes through these subjective experiences,
Right.
first person experiences, but of yourself plus others.
Right. Right. Yeah. What do you struggle with in life?
No, not really much. I think I'm reasonably lucky. I don't really have to struggle with much.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you decide what to work on?
How do I decide what to work on? I think, okay, first, I mean, it starts off with a phase of a lot of exploration and, uh, various experiences, right? So talking to people, reading books, and so on. And that stage is not very directed. I think it is just what you are doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then for me, it's very much an aha moment. At some point, someday I wake up and I really feel, okay, I need to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, this is at a larger scale than the more standard question, which is, okay, you're working on a certain problem and you're trying to figure out how to solve it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's the nature of creativity that it's been well studied. So there is a phase which is what people call preparation and incubation. So preparation is you read about relevant things, you talk to people, you think about it, incubation is, I mean, it's there somewhere in your brain stewing,
Mm-hmm.
and it may not necessarily yield from direct assault at the problem,
Mm-hmm.
but you wake up or you're in a shower and then you have some idea, right? I think that to me, deciding what problem to work on is the same,
Mm-hmm.
or what area to go into.
Yeah.
It's just then you can think about it very consciously and put down the pros and cons. And I think I have this equation, which is that you need to look at, uh, in order to have a maximum impact, you need to consider the product of two terms. One is importance, and the other is influenceability.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the importance is how important is the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I mean, there are certain problems which are easy to solve, but they're not very important.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then there's influenceability, which has to do with your own capability to move the needle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I mean, so world hunger is very important, but my ability to move on the needle is zero. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so what you should do is you should look for problems where you have a high product of importance and influenceability. So this
Yeah.
is my equation. Impact equals importance multiplied with influenceability.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. Um, what are two traits that are common to some of the best collaborators or colleagues you've had?
Uh, I think the ability to to communicate fuzzy ideas.
Mm,
See, when something has been fully worked out, it's easy to describe, right? I mean, a mathematical argument is, in some sense, easy
mm,
to communicate, right? I mean, it may take a little bit of time and you may have to read it twice to understand it, but at some level, it's very easy.
mm,
Okay. But often when we are working on a problem, we have half baked ideas. And somehow a good collaborator is one with whom you can communicate in these half baked ideas and get some reaction.
mm,
Okay. So I think that I need to have that ability and that other person needs to have that ability.
mhm,
And and this takes time. And I think some of it is just getting to know the person,
mm,
but some of it is also a person's style.
mhm,
And because they have to, so that is what I think is very important in a collaborator, or you need to build it up. I think that, I mean, I found that the people with whom I initially was not at that level,
mhm,
but over time we got that way.
mm,
And the second is that when you're talking to some people, as you are explaining to them, you find that it all becomes clear to you yourself.
mm,
So the task, so in a sense, it's all happening inside you. You're
mm,
trying to explain to somebody or discuss with somebody or make the case.
mm.
And in that process, you have an aha moment. I mean, okay.
Yeah.
And I think that when you have people like that are great fun to be with.
Mm, yeah.
Okay. And I think so. You need to have people who are not uh, who are who are challenging, but also willing to take the effort to listen to quarter baked or half baked ideas.
Mm,
And you need to have the kind of trust that if somebody challenges you, that doesn't mean that they disrespect you,
mhm,
right?
yeah.
And I think that this is something that I think a lot of young people need to learn,
Mm,
because I think we are getting into a state where people feel that, or if somebody challenges me, then maybe they don't respect me or don't respect my work or whatever.
mm,
No, I think when somebody challenges you is the best way to make your ideas sharper.
mm, mm,
And some of my best friends and colleagues, I mean, I respect them because they will challenge me and not let me get away with BS.
Yeah. 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 Are these traits easy to spot though? Are they easy to spot early? And do you think you can spot them well?
Hmm. Well, sometimes you can hit off right away,
Hmm.
and sometimes you need to develop the trust. I think that that's a personality specific thing.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
think that with some people you acquire this initially they are all very proper and respectful, but after a little while of getting to know them,
Hmm.
then they're much more open with their opinions.
Hmm.
And I think that that's perfectly fine. I mean, I think that this is one of these things where which changes with age and seniority, right? When I was
Hmm.
younger and I was exactly at the same level of experience with other people,
Hmm.
it was much easier to have these frank conversations,
Hmm.
right? Because they didn't think of me as any more senior or any more knowledgeable. Okay,
Yeah.
when you are slightly more senior and slightly more knowledgeable, or not, may not really be knowledgeable, but you may just be thought of as knowledgeable,
Yeah.
then 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 that can crimp the relationship a little bit, right? Because
Hmm.
they might and they might not feel comfortable. They may not know whether how I would react to being challenged.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Right. So this is a case of you have to work this out. I think you work this out by actually it's a repeated game, to
Hmm.
use the lingo, right? It's
Yeah.
you have multiple interactions, and then over those interactions, each person builds a model of the other person,
Hmm.
which makes it more efficient.
Right.
So that's why I find it super easy to work with like people who are my former students, even if I encounter them 5 years later,
Hmm.
because that level of individual trust is already there,
Right. Right.
right? Otherwise, it can be developed, but
Hmm.
it has to be developed.
Yeah.
And I think, and this is one thing about my time at Facebook, which has been interesting, which is that instead of just dealing with my own students, I was dealing here with colleagues and collaborators
Hmm.
an equal level. And here you develop that comfort over time by through multiple interactions.
Right. Right.
And it's a different style, but I found it interesting.
Yeah. Makes sense. Oceans or hills?
Oceans or hills? Ah, this is the old one about Confucius, the wise versus the uh, oceans.
Oceans. What is something that you love doing but you're terrible at?
What is something that I love doing but I'm terrible at? Singing.
Yeah. What is something you did recently that surprised even people who know you well?
No, I don't think I have
Hmm.
I don't think I have a compelling answer for that.
Hmm. When was the last time you felt like a kid in a candy store?
Uh, I think when I go to a really big bookstore,
Hmm.
okay,
Hmm.
I think, and sadly these are dying, but I think I think that in Europe, you're like in Britain, in London, or Oxford, or sometimes you have these amazing bookstores,
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
and I just uh, enjoy that
Yeah.
atmosphere.
Yeah.
Okay. I think a museum as well. Certain museums, you have the same feeling.
Hmm.
So I would say bookstores and museums.
Yeah. Yeah. What is something you did not like at the time, but you're glad happened?
Uh, I, I think maybe I think there's certain failures in life.
Hmm.
Okay, in the sense that okay, I was trying for job X. I'm not going to name the X and Y.
Hmm.
I was trying for job X.
Hmm.
I didn't get X. I got Y.
Hmm.
At that time, X was my dream job.
Hmm.
Okay,
Hmm.
and I'm so glad that I took Y.
I see. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I mean there are. Uh, I mean I mean you might that's a kind of thing which people would describe as rationalization, right? You get something,
Hmm.
you wanted something else, and now you just adjust your expectations and say, oh, what I have is what is great.
Hmm.
Of course, in the short run, that can happen.
Hmm.
Okay. But in the long run, I think one can be more objective.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so actually, when I got my job at Berkeley, have not mentioned what there was some other
Hmm.
university I really wanted to go to, which I
Hmm.
did not get a job at.
Hmm.
And I'm so glad that I actually went to Berkeley instead.
Yeah. 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 What do you easily get nostalgic about?
I think for me, nostalgia is most easily triggered by music.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, so a few years ago, I went through some health crisis,
Hmm.
and then for months I was basically at home recovering.
Hmm.
And at that point, I found that what I retreated to was music,
Hmm.
and I think that somehow at a emotional level, music is more uh, is stronger than anything else.
Yeah. 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 Um, what is some of the best advice you've gotten or given?
I don't know what advice I've surely received some advice, but I've forgotten a lot of it.
Hmm.
Uh, Advice I've given, yeah, there's advice I give to students and junior faculty and so on, and I can repeat some of my standard ones. One is uh, uh, but, pick your problems, pick your battles.
Hmm.
So initially there is a tendency to try to do too much,
Hmm.
and then you do too much, and then you do too much poorly.
Hmm.
It's better to be selective and do a few things really well,
Hmm.
because your scientific reputation is never made up by your paper count,
Hmm.
but rather your few best things, right?
Hmm.
And now of course the problem is you don't know what will turn out to be the best,
Yeah.
but you won't get a chance if you do 50 random things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So pick a few things which in your best judgment are the most promising,
Hmm.
and go for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's an advice on a research, for one important piece of advice for research career. Second important piece of advice for research career is have a portfolio uh,
Hmm.
in the of problems, somewhere you know you know everything. It's basically just a question of execution,
Hmm.
and to some which are slightly outside your comfort zone, to some which are fully outside your comfort zone.
Hmm.
uh, I mean, they have to be interesting and you have to have some angle on them.
Hmm.
But by so you need to divide up your portfolio because into problems of type A, B, and C.
Hmm.
And then you will find over time that those problems which are slightly outside your comfort zone, they will stretch you,
Mhm.
and then that becomes part of your comfort zone.
Hmm.
So over time, you expand the set on which you are comfortable.
Yeah, makes sense.
And if you just focus on the things which you can do really well in the next 1 year,
Hmm.
you will never grow. And suddenly you will find yourself feeling sterile, stuck in some place, and that you're the king of this little small hilltop, and you're isolated from everybody else.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. My last question, being as honest as possible, why did you decide to do this interview?
Why did I decide to do this? Because you asked me. No, okay. I think I'll give a slightly more serious answer, which is uh, I think it's to do with philosophy of life. And if you recall, in the earlier stages of this interview, I talked about the sort of life cycle and the stages of life and
Hmm.
Indian philosophy and so on.
Hmm.
Okay, well, I thought that this interview would be a chance to go through that exploration.
Hmm. Yeah. Sounds great. Thank you so much, Jitendra, for taking the time to do this.
Sure,
Thank you. Yeah.
pleasure.
All
Okay,
right. Yeah.
good.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.